Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elisa Joseph, and I am Director of Programs for the U.S. Black Chambers. And really happy to be with you here today as we talk about business succession planning with Chase for Business. As you know, we continue to deliver webinars that are beneficial for you to be able to not only move through COVID, but to thrive on the other side with the kinds of technology, information, and tools that are going to help you be successful. And so today is no different. I would love to introduce to you my partner with Chase for Business, Shay Taylor. As we move through this, Shay is really a great business banker for Chase. We've been doing a series of these webinars together, and so I hope you all are enjoying them. I hope that you're getting the information that you really need, and as always, you know that you can contact us at programs@usblackchambers.org whenever you need additional support and guidance. So I'm going to introduce Shay, and then we're going to walk through this presentation. So first of all, let me just say hello, Shay. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Alyssa.
And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Shay. So Shay, as I mentioned, is a business banker for Chase, and his area of expertise is being really focused on Black and Latinx entrepreneurs for Chase in Atlanta, Georgia. He has over 10 years of experience at Chase, as well as 13 years of experience in financial services. He graduated from Valdosta State University in South Georgia in 2006 and began to pursue a career in the financial service industry and just celebrated his 10th anniversary, as we mentioned, with Chase. He has worked on many Chase projects, his most recent being Advancing Black Pathways. And in his previous role, he was a business relationship manager covering the Atlanta market. And so as an extension of the work that we do as part of Advancing Black Pathways, Advancing Black Entrepreneurs encompasses the work specifically in the space of working with business owners. And so as many of you know, if you participated in our events in the past or our webinars in the past, U.S. Black Chambers, along with Black Enterprise, the National Minority Supplier Development Council, and the National Urban League have partnered together with Chase in Advancing Black Entrepreneurs so that we can bring you the type of information and resources as a collaboration that's going to help your business move forward. So with that, we're going to start this webinar today. We really want to talk about business succession planning. And the reason that we want to do that is so that it's not only important for you to, as you're moving through this pandemic, to be thinking about how you move your business forward, but we also want you to be thinking about the future. We want you to be thinking about, I think the pandemic was a perfect example of not necessarily always having a plan of action when something as catastrophic as a pandemic hits. And so whether we're talking about a pandemic or whether we're talking about just life changes or opportunities that may present themselves for you to be able to maybe enter into a new business opportunity that you were thinking about, it's always great to have a business succession plan. So this is going to be addressing the challenges of what's next. And we are going to invite you all to participate with us as we always do. And we're going to get started. So we're going to cover today these 4 specific areas. We're going to give you an overview of succession planning itself. We're going to look at taking a goals-based approach to succession planning. We're going to talk about what does the structure of a transaction look like, whether that be you wanting to sell your business, transferring it to family members, transferring it to even employees within your business. We're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. And then what important ideas and key reminders should you be keeping in place? And as always, we're going to take a little bit of Q&A. And so let's talk about why we're here today. Someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. And that's a quote by Warren Buffett. And so it's important for us to not only think about the present of our companies, but the future of our companies. If you're really looking to build a legacy and you want to be a business owner whose company is around for 20, 30, 40 years. I think about Chase, which has been around since the beginning of banking in the US for the most part. But if you think about their long storied history, they've been here at least 100 years that we know of, as the Rockefellers really put the banking piece together. So you want to have that level of longevity. You want to sort of see your company be able to move forward, whether you're here and moving into another capacity or whether you're leaving as a legacy for your family. And so that's why we're here talking about this today. And so succession planning is big business. A lot of times I don't think we think about what it means to have a plan in place. What we know right now is that in Q20 of 2020, the sales price of businesses that were sold increased 6.1% over 2019. And so you see sort of this momentum as people are thinking about next opportunities that exist, being able to free up cash to do that next great thing that entrepreneur has in his or her mind. And so there's been no downturn in terms of people thinking about selling or having their business succeed in another shape, form, or fashion. 70% of business owners are attempting to transition within the next 5 years. And 62% of today's business owners, we do know, have not even thought about what their transition plan is going to be. So there's clearly a market out there, and we want to have you primed and prepped to be able to take advantage of opportunities that may be coming your way. So a lot of times when we talk about various types of planning, we focus a lot on estate planning, right? When we talk about legacy, we're really sort of talking about that from a framework of estate planning. And that's usually due to the death of a person who was the owner, how that person's total wealth, including their business, is passed along to their heirs, and what is that legal process that gets formalized upon their death. Succession planning is a little bit different because it's not totally just based on what happens in an estate planning situation. You can do this at any time, particularly when you see new opportunities. So this is really about the business as opposed to estate planning being about the individual. It really is about what steps are needed to keep your business intact. If you want it to stay intact and want it to grow, beyond yourself, and how do you keep it profitable under the next generation of leadership? And so all of this goes to what are the ongoing series of decisions and actions that have to occur within the owner's lifetime to make that succession be successful. So today we're going to talk about the importance of having a well-conceived plan. What's the framework and timeline for transferring ownership if that needs to happen? What needs to sort of happen as we look at your future plans, your financial needs as a family, and how you minimize your tax exposure? And then how does it provide you with some level of peace of mind that your business is still going to succeed regardless of what circumstances or challenges might arise? And then the other piece that we can really look at, sometimes you really do want to exit the business. Think about it in terms of maybe you want to retire, maybe you want to take early retirement, right? And so there are things that you have to think about in terms of whether or not there is a family member that you can pass the business along to. A lot of times we have found that sometimes your children don't want your business. And so you have to think about, what does that mean? Can you transfer shares to a group of employees who have been running the business for you? Now this is an opportunity for them to be placed in an ownership position. Do you want to sell to an outside third party? Do you want to take the business public, or do you want to close the business? And so all of those pieces are what you need to think about as you're making your plan. And then obviously when there isn't a plan, you really expose your business to disruption, to uncertainty, to closure in a lot of cases. And so you can lose money through ineffective tax planning, financial planning, estate planning, and that can put your company potentially in jeopardy, as well as what your future fortune might be. So I'm going to start to pass this on to Shay for him to talk about what a goals-based approach is. One of the things I want you all to think about as we go through this conversation is we don't really talk a lot about the value of your business when we're growing our business. We don't talk about who is qualified to help you determine what that business valuation is, how it is. What's the mindset in terms of comprising the value around it? You know, we can think our business is worth something, but in the marketplace, it may not be worth as much as we think, or may be worth more than what we think. And so a lot of this conversation is going to be talking about this from a business valuation perspective, what type of professional you need to pull into place, and what that might mean if you want to also sell your business or buy a business down the line. So Shay, do you want to take us through taking a goals-based approach?
Yeah, I definitely will. And, we'll keep it on the slide here. I'll just mention real quick, I'm in our Russell Center here in Atlanta, Georgia, in our Chase Lounge. And so when we talk about succession planning, H.J. Russell was a phenomenal businessman, a contractor. And this is I'm sitting under his tree literally right now. The Chase Lounge is a free place where business owners can come, and it's an incubator that they can start to build their business, get support, and it has satellite offices from all business support services in the city. So when you think about succession planning and selling your business, Lisa, you said it exactly right. It's not just about when someone passes on. H.J. Russell is still alive. It's not about when you want to pass it on to your family. It can be a sale. It can be selling it, or it can be creating something like this that is going to help people that H.J. Russell may never meet. So with that said, let's dive into the slide. We want to make sure that we're looking at three things. As you see, we're taking a goal-based approach. And what that means is finding out what that number one job that you want your money to do. You want to know and really assess if you have enough time and money to accomplish those goals. And then also, we really should involve in who you should involve in the decision-making process. It's very important. I'll say this will be my mantra. We can go to the next slide. But my mantra is going to be always get your professionals. Don't listen to brother, sister, mother, cousins. Try to get professionals always. We're going to have some audience participation. Alyssa, do we want them to just respond in the chat? I think we're not at the portion we're going to bring somebody like on the proverbial stage, but so you all feel free to respond in the chat, and we'll take a moment to highlight it. But I want you to really think about what goals are important to you when it comes to your business and your personal legacy. You can respond to that in the chat, and then also, what business adjustments have you made as a result of COVID-19? So take a minute to respond. And we'll maybe, Alyssa, feel free to dive in. We want to maybe divert and maybe expound on a couple of those, but we'll go on to the next slide. And so, emphasis on a goals-based approach. And you're really going to have that conversation again with a professional. So the professional it's not going to be the banker. The banker can be involved, but it's really going to be that attorney. And really understanding what the primary purpose is of your wealth. As I mentioned, I'm sitting under H.J. Russell's tree right now. And with the planning, he created something with his wealth that makes him and his family happy. And it's going to leave a legacy. So a couple of areas you want to look in is one, spending. So to support your lifestyle goals with the assumption that all wealth will be spent in your lifetime. So you want to approach from that standpoint. And while you're looking at your spending, you also want to think about preservation. So then, yes, you want to be able to support your lifestyle, but that doesn't mean you have to blow through everything. So how can you preserve wealth? And what's the strategy to pass that wealth down multiple generations? And then dividing. How do you want to identify the set amount of money to either create a minimum wealth level or leave it to beneficiaries for them to decide? And last but not least, you want to create that strategy to grow it. And when you think about a family culture, I think this can be applicable to families. I'm just going through this right now with my father and his will, who basically brought me into his house one day and said, hey, here's the will. I'm going to sit it right here. If anything happens, it's here. And I'm like, okay, this is a completely wrong thing that we need to do. So does the family have a strategy, but also does the business have a strategy? Do the partners know where to go? So that way, and they understand the strategy and the culture, so that way it enables them to grow the wealth in perpetuity.
And Kim Barnes has said that she wants her family to be able to continue to get monthly income. So we're talking both the preservation strategy as well as the growth strategy in terms of her goals.
Excellent. And we can go on to the next slide. And so we did this little poll in Chase. And so in a recent client event, here are about 100 JP Morgan clients. There's how they responded when asked which intent are they currently focused on. 20 and it's kind of even down the board, but 24 was on the percent was spending, 22 on the divide, 29 was the perseverance, and 25% was the growth mechanism. So I'm always interested on the preserve. I'm happy to see that was a high marker, and that's something. And again, and just in my opinion, as we're looking in building wealth, when we start having these wealth conversations, that's one of the first conversations that the wealth bankers are having. What are the preservation methods and the way to go about it? So a couple of your peers and business owners within Chase, here's how a few of them responded, just for your own sake. And with that, we can go to the next slide. I like this one because it helps with continuing identifying intent. You are not supposed to, I feel like I'm having the same conversation I had with my father last week. We are not supposed to know everything. That's why they have professionals. That's why they charge, and that's why we pay them. And so it's hard to tell that to an educator, right? So it's hard to, and the first step is really looking and identifying what that intent is. So, when you're looking at the wealth creators timeline and the family wealth level and what you want to do, again, we're going back to those same markers. Spend, in this particular scenario, $0 at the end of the lifetime. You look at the divide, and you look at where divide kind of plays out. Wealth at the end of the lifetime given away to the beneficiaries. So that's very important when it comes to, in case of, God forbid, the head of the company passing away. How will that divide out? Who is going to be the person that's going to make those decisions? It can't be written down in a family Bible somewhere, right? I think we all kind of have had that same thing as well. It must be somewhere that is legal, so things don't get caught up in any type of courts, because that's where the business, at that point, the legacy is in jeopardy. And then preservation, there's a family, again, to me, I even say family structure and business structure and the culture comes into play, even on the preserve. Is it structurally sustained across generations? And that's going to mean, if you're going to do that, everybody in the business should have bought into the culture, or everybody in the family should have bought into the culture. So if it's going to a family member, then has that person been working in the different departments? Do they understand where we're trying to go to that? Not only just customer acquisition and customer retainment, but what the business fundamental culture is, and how they're going to drive that to their generation and then implement that in the generations to come. And last but not least, and again, I go in, the culture is so important. Down the family, wealth can increase in perpetuity. Now you have a tree that's going to produce more seeds to plant more trees. And that grow part will be, if you look at that blue and you compare it to the spin, that is going, if we do this in a way that's thoughtful, meaningful, and intentional, it allow us to put something that's going to grow for generations beyond our wildest dreams. And we can go to and so just a couple of triggers. So I've had these conversations before when we're talking about succession planning, retirement or death, or family discord. And I can't, put enough that it's not only retirement or death, but sometimes it may just be your exit strategy. Sometimes it's an extra strategy to sell a business, or if you're looking to buy a business. And I've seen both sides of the coin. And so, that's from a personal standpoint, is that retirement, death, family discord. But I would also put a bullet in there of selling, and just, we can maybe call it retirement, but maybe it's the right time to sell. Maybe you got more work and you want to do something else, but maybe you have another chapter. Sometimes it may be just right time to sell, not to bleed into the business, liquidity needs, management failure, and things of that nature. If we're having that conversation and we're thinking every day structurally, how are we building a culture? How do we make sure that management has all the resources and knowledge to make the proper decisions when you have stepped away? And then you got some external factors. You got law change, industry pressure, favorable valuations, unsolicited offers. I can tell you that the last two are what really throw a lot of my clients in a tizzy. And a lot of Black business owners, you have been phenomenal in developing great businesses. And this is the one, and this is the part where what I have seen in my experience that we're not prepared for, because we're used to just kind of building it. We would have never thought that someone from middle America or one of the coasts is going to come in and want to talk to us about selling our business. So do we have a strategy like that in mind, so we're not caught off guard, so we can take advantage of that opportunity, and go sit under our own tree if we'd like to? We'll go to the next
Shay,
slide. Okay.
Shay, would you say too in that realm, as we look at both the personal and the external piece in particular, that there are certain industries that seem more primed around it? And I'm thinking more tech, like, most people go in and, they're going in because they got venture capital. So they already know what they want to do 5 years out, as opposed to when you build something yourself, really from scratch in a completely different industry, not thinking about it. Do you think some industries are more primed than others in that thought process?
Yes, because tech that's kind of par for the course with tech. And I'm not going to speak for every business owner in tech, but I would say a good amount exit strategy is to sell out. Some have other strategies as well. But one thing that I see that really catches a lot of owners off guard are those B2B type companies. So if you're installing cabling, or voice over IP phones and things of that nature, and you've kind of had a business that you've been it's a kind of an accounts receivable type business, and you're just doing a lot of B2B around the area, what typically happens is some of these companies don't want to really go to war with you in your territory. You may have done a great job with customer acquisition, retaining your clients, having return customers. So, I always joke, Chase's motto is, I don't speak for Chase in this sense. I'm going to talk to Jamie Dimon, but from afar, it sometimes seems like if we can't beat them, we buy them. And that is a motto that a lot of big companies take. I know many people that have had smaller businesses that have been whooping butt, and Amazon has come in and say, hey, we want this particular piece to incorporate in. And now they're calling around like, well, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? But if you have at least a plan or a working plan in place and some professionals, you can have that. So Alyssa, you're absolutely right. It's not only just for tech companies. It could be for any other company that you have built from the ground up. And understanding that also, and understanding your culture of the company, helps you make a good fit for when you sell it off. And also you can charge a little bit more on the price when we talk about the goodwill of a business, because sometimes there are metrics. Profitability is a metric. I want everybody to hear me. You can never get around profitability. There are some things in addition to profitability that can drive the price up, and that's going to be the culture and what you're driving in that area. And I've been lucky to be a part of that a few times. So potential questions, when you're, when you're looking at your spend, right? So you're thinking about spending. So we're going to kind of dive and keep going deep in. So remember, spend is what you're doing to support your lifestyle goals, with the assumption that all wealth will be spent in your lifetime. So some potential questions that people think about are, who are the potential buyers? When is the best time to sell? I think, Elisa, that kind of goes back to your add-on. And should I do any pre-transaction planning? 3 is one of my most important ones. To go back to your question, Alyssa, I think any business owner, would I do it every day? No. But what I would do is I would take some time, maybe annually or biannually, to just kind of to play through a I call it a transaction game or something, and just do some transaction planning on what would be your price. We do it with our homes. I think we do it naturally with our homes because it's, there are some tools out there, but we know in our head, like what we would let go for, or if we don't know what to let go for, we can easily get somebody to let us know where it is in the market. I think it's important to, if you have a business and you're thinking about that, now would I spend $3,000 or $4,000 yearly on a valuation? No. But it just kind of depends on your, what your flavor and what business that you're in. And if you've had any of these conversations and really understand, I think the first person I would walk through and talk to my CPA and just understanding what is the value of my business, because that's somebody who's going to be able to kind of help out. And they may even know somebody that they can connect you to that can kind of give you a kind of working model that you can play with. Because if there's not a transaction on the table, there's really no need to go and spend for evaluation unless, that's just what it calls for, you like to do. And so when we're approaching these things, we're approaching this mindset and creating, again, the strategy, our thought process. Who are the potential buyers? What are their wants and needs? Can we anticipate that? Do we have a realistic timeline for implementation? So if someone wants to buy your business, it's not like selling a car or a house. A lot of times the company that purchased your company is going to want you to stay on to help with the transition process. Do you know how much your time is going to be worth to do that? Because you can bake that in to, you get the sale of the business and you may need a $200,000 salary to lead the integration into their company. And then, the one last thought process of an approach is ensuring you can generate sufficient after-tax revenue to support debt and interest payments. I've seen companies get in this before when they're over leveraged, and we kind of talk about this a little bit in some of our other slides, like the power of capital. Listen, these things kind of start blending in at the same time. If your company is over leveraged, that can impact your payout. And so it's important as I were growing the company, and this is a whole nother talk for a whole nother day, is to make sure that we are having appropriate debt. So that way we're in position. One, it's good to just have a healthy business that way. You don't want to be operating a business that's over leveraged and can't get funds. But in the case of a transaction, you having that opportunity is a good thing. And understanding that opportunity. Or do we have any more in the chat, Alyssa, as we around spend that you may print? No, okay, so I'll go to the divide. So I'll remind you, as we are in the primary intent of the person who kind of identifies as this says divide, I'm gonna just say divider. I think we should put an ER under that because you're active, right? So the divider, their intent is to identify a set amount of money to either create a minimum wealth level or leave to beneficiaries. So that means now as a strategy that you want to grow your personal wealth while you're alive. So a couple of questions that the people to the divider mindset ask are, to whom should I pass my ownership? Will my heirs have enough liquidity to pay estate taxes? I think another one, again, that's not on here because we're talking about while we're living, is what crises can come up that could prevent me from selling or that can eat up the liquidity that I've built. And again, it's something that I like to do we do in our mentorship called crisis games, where we companies and countries do this all the time, where they'll look at potential threats and really kind of work their way through it. So those are a couple of potential questions, and the potential approaches to these questions are, identifying and training the successor and observe him and her through his or her development. I have owners that I mentor once a month. We have their children on the call, just in case they're already in the business, to start helping them understand some of these very simple, basic concepts. But it's easy if it's spoon-fed than if it's thrown on them all at once. Anticipate intra-family dynamics from the division of ownership and address it in the ways that maintain stability. Again, you're now kind of working through those, and not only family dynamics, but company dynamics. Is there somebody that has shown interest that wants to buy the company? Can we start positioning that person? If the family doesn't still want to run it, can we position that person to either buy it by loan or by cash or by whatever? So that way you can transition when you want to. Remember, transition is not only retirement and death, it could be you're ready to start a new chapter. So it's important to kind of think about those things. And then last but not least, are we going to review the following strategies: the tax, and other implications around legal, around legalities, and then other business agreements and insurance needs. So do we understand how those things kind of work all together? So that way a transition can be easy and it's not over leveraged. Do you want to take that question, Alyssa?
Yeah, and Shay, Deborah mentioned, how do we sell to employees? And I think one of the
Mhm.
the great things as we're thinking through this is particularly when you talk about the approach, understanding kind of what's the tax liability, what's the strategy relative to that, understanding, you know, if you have key man life insurance in place that was taking care of everything in case something happened to you, what is the implications of that relative to the business? Understanding, I think a lot about brand, and you were talking about those intangible values, is understanding what is your brand reputation and how does that figure into the goodwill of the pricing of your company. And then finally, one of the best things I think you always can do, and this has changed a little bit over the years. Back in the day, there used to be retirement plans for small businesses called ESOP programs, where
Yep.
really
I
you're
just Googled
helping to
ESOP.
give, yeah, you were helping to give the employees a little bit of the piece of the pie as part of their retirement piece, but giving them sort of a stake in the company, and then obviously in its success. And so as we talk about the things that you would think about if you wanted to sell the company to your employees, or you had a key set of employees that you think can really take your business to the next level, what are some of the considerations that you would want to think about?
Yeah, and also what revenue size works for a
Right,
strategy, because ESOPs
right.
do not work for all revenue sizes. Back when, I think, again, don't hold me to this, but around the range of the 5 to 10 million marker, again, depending on companies. So you would have to do your research, but do your research with a qualified professional to really identify if an ESOP is, and ESOPs are a great way to start identifying those clients and those companies that want to take over, especially if you're in the construction industry or things of that nature. Those are places when, as they grow, that we really start in any industry dealing with accounts receivables. Those are very, ESOPs are very popular and able to identify and start grooming the next successor. So as my last client who did an ESOP, he just wanted to sit on the porch and drink whiskey. So every time we talked, that was our conversation. So, you know, how do we get him to the porch to drink whiskey? And he ended up finding a potential successor, and he ended up financing and buying the business. I no longer had the client at that time, but it's something that we'd always worked on. We can also go to the next
Right.
slide.
And so,
Oh, go ahead,
okay,
Lisa.
and I have one more before we go.
Okay.
Let's see. From Nicole Blake, how do I get information about my team getting on a business call? She's been in business since 2018. She has pretty much a young company, so I
Yeah.
think there is those opportunities, but again, I think having professional advice is really key.
Yeah, start at your bank, start with your banker. But I would say if the business is making less than $1 million, there may not be a lot of options. But if there's not a lot of options from the bank standpoint, there's nothing wrong with touching base with the local, Alyssa, we talked about this yesterday, an attorney, a
Mhm.
business attorney, to really walk that through and to kind of figure that out. It may not be something that you spend 50% of your time on, but maybe 5 or 10%, so you can kind of work that. And I like that she's thinking like that already, because she can start incorporating those strategies and possibly use those to retain employees. Because employee retention, I think, Alyssa, if you and I could solve the issue of employees, I think you and I can both quit what we're doing and go under our own tree. But that's the number one issue of all business owners. And I love the way, even though the company is young, I love the way that she is thinking. So maybe those opportunities are maybe discussed best with a business attorney. And then as the company grows, she can already be thinking, how do I position this, and how do I keep my employees involved, and how can I employ different employee relation strategies to help me retain top talent?
Yep. And we're going to move a little bit more quickly,
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
So please post your questions, and we'll get to them.
Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna get to three and four here. So again, preserve and growth. We combine these together. A couple of questions that we look on is, and again, a reminder: preservation is you wanting to create that family culture, that strategy, and then the growth is you want things to continue to grow. Even after, in perpetuity, even after you have exited the business in the many different ways that we talked about that. But questions that these particular individuals ask themselves are what kind of management succession plans should be in place? I think that's key on the last question. What policies are in place for divided distributions? How will family members and management be compensated fairly? because you may have family members that don't want any part of the business. So how does that work? And trust me, I have seen it to when these things aren't adjudicated properly, when it comes to like selling corporate real estate and things that or commercial real estate, it's been an issue that has played out. I see it a lot in the industries with doctors. So if there's any doctors or attorneys out there with a bunch of partnerships and you got 3 or 4 people or 5, 7 people, and y'all all are golf buddies and you play around, you're doing business, having fun, please have that set up. I've had a real estate transaction go 6 months extra because all of the partners had passed and there was no living will testing. We had literally had to track the kids down. So I was on LinkedIn myself trying to help this customer buy the whatever, and it took an additional 6 months. There was nothing in place, and it was a big mess, but we ended up getting through it. And so as we approach this from a preserve and growth thought process, are we creating a family governance to clarify roles, rights, and responsibilities? Remember what my dad told me. He said, "Hey son, here's all my stuff. I'm putting it right there." My immediate response was, well, one, it needs to be electronically. 2, I'm the oldest of 4 kids, so I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to see what's in there. So let's look at where this can be held, where I can easily find it. I don't want to have to be rummaging through things and miss out on things. So how can we have it and make it very clear? But really what this approach is, whether it's periodic family assemblies, council meetings, constitution outlines, all of it comes from building a culture. That's your responsibility as the owner while you're here, to be building a culture the way that you see fit for the business or for the money or for the monies and the revenue that you get from the sale is going to help keep driving the family. And again, I go back, we're standing in a phenomenal place. H.J. Russell, he's been out of business for years. His kids are running this, and the sons put this together. This is his tree. And little secret, this was his original location. So it has some history as well. So not this place that we're in, but a different part of the center. We'll go to the next slide and we'll go ahead and get through 3. I forgot we had this here. So basically we wanted to give some examples of some acquisitions with people who are still living, because again, it's not all about death. But Jay-Z acquired major, or Square acquired major title, or a majority of title from, and that's a Jay-Z streaming services. And it was a $297 million deal. And that announcement came, after Jay-Z announced that, he would sell 50% of his champagne company and some other dealings as well. But he is still alive and kicking, and he probably wants to free himself up to take on other projects. And so these are great art, and these are great thought processes and great examples to look at, where although the number is very astronomical, and hey, we can get there as well. An idea can bubble there as well. Let's never doubt the aspiration. But regardless of the number, I'm pretty sure that Jay-Z and his team had things in place to have these conversations and position. And really, as you go on and we want these business owners on here. If you want to be involved in multiple businesses in your lifetime, you can do so. It's not all about H.J. Russell did a great thing. He worked the business and worked it till he was older and retired. But we're in a different world where you can do multiple businesses and do multiple deals, selling percentages and things of that nature. So it becomes even more important to think about the exit strategy. And really, that's what we should call this, the exit strategy, from when you're looking to transition a business. Do you want to hit these? I can hit Travel Noir. Did you want to talk about Cheryl Conti, Alyssa?
Sure. So Attentively was a tool that Cheryl Conti created to help businesses and nonprofits with their email marketing list and with kind of their digital presence online. And so what's really great about what she was able to do is she grew her company such that she was able, that company in particular got acquired by Blackbaud in 2016. She had another company that received equity and was acquired by Facebook. So this is a woman whose strategy has been to build companies and then to be able to have them create the kind of value that's going to be purchased by a Fortune 500. So again, just trying to give you, any of us can do this. You just have to be thinking more broadly, and you need to sort of know upfront, when I start this business, what is it that I'm trying to do?
And Travel Noir as an avid traveler and someone who not only followed but participated in Travel Noir as a customer, and some other Black travel brands. This is who would have thought, right? You have a Black-owned tech company, buying a Black-owned business, and that shouldn't even really be a statement, right? Like, this is stuff that has been happening for decades. But the great thing about the internet is we're finding out more and more about these things. And the thing that I love about what these two women did, and Zim, I mean, I think this started as a Facebook group, if I can remember correctly, and it's just blown up to something worldwide. So, she did what any of us that ever either joined or started a Facebook group. You clicked a couple of things, added some friends that probably didn't know what the heck they were being added to. Some left, some stayed, and
Right.
you shared a bunch of stuff. And again, if you hit the plus button, there's many activities that she did. It was not, I want to oversimplify what she did, but there are many activities that have been done. But these are things that, I mean, you're looking at it from both sides. Was Blavity, was that one that they were looking at their succession plan, looking how they can grow their business and what they could do on their end game. And then Zim was able to look at what she did with Travel Noir and say, okay, well, here's my succession plan. Here's how I'm going to go. So what you see right here is you have two Black-owned companies, two different sides of the coins that were able to get together. And I'm pretty sure it helped each other and saw benefit and value in the transaction.
Absolutely. And I want to also, we're moving into 3 in terms of structuring, but I want us to be thinking both on what your succession plan is, where you want your business to go in the future, but also what your potential strategy would be to either purchase another company to move forward, because there is that opportunity now. When you're thinking about scale, you don't have to start everything from scratch. You can add on to your existing business. You can purchase another business with the idea that you see yourself being able to move it forward and move it again to this strategy of selling. So I want us to think about this in terms of not being out of the realm of our understanding.
Excellent. So structuring a transaction. This is only one slide, I think, in this section, but we'll hit it and hit it hard. But here's the key thing I want to make sure we leave everybody with: go to the professionals. No memes on Twitter, no memes on Instagram, no talking to somebody at the local shop. We all do it for certain things. I do it myself. I always have to remind myself for certain things, I got to go to the professional. Because that can end up happening when you get to a professional, they're gonna be like, what the heck have you been doing? And you may actually hurt yourself and your chances of having a phenomenal exit, or stick the landing, as one of my business attorney friends say. You wanna be able to stick that landing. So no matter what you wanna do, whether you wanna sell the business at retirement, split the business among beneficiaries, sustain a legacy family business, look at, and no matter what strategy and solution that you wanna implement, whether it's buy-sell agreements, ESOPs, we mentioned that earlier, guarantor, retained annuity trust, family limited partnerships, all of those items, the average person doesn't know anything about. Don't write them down. Don't type them up on Word and say, okay, here's my thing. Go to a professional. If I could rename the slide, I would just say, go to the professionals. That will help you in starting to identify. And if you're a small business just starting out, talk to your CPA or your business attorney. They can start giving you some working knowledge on how to build that.
And the one thing I do want to just add to this conversation, because I know, Shay, you were talking about what happens, when you're talking about family, kind of pulling the family together and identifying, who's got what role. Sometimes having the professional with you, particularly when you're talking about the business, separating that from sort of a personal estate planning perspective, is that person can be the objective and be the one who's helping to intercede on your behalf. So you don't necessarily have to always lead the hard conversation, right? Whenever we start to talk about money and families, it's always a challenge. So make it more of a business. This is about business. Make it more of a business conversation and have that business professional in there to sort of give you that buffer to kind of to move this dialogue and conversation forward.
Absolutely. We're going to go to the next slide, which are going to be kind of just going to ride us into our last 3 slides. And I'm happy we'll have some time for Q&A. We'll go ahead and go to, these are the important ideas and key reminders. So just to recap, 3 things to ask during a succession planning. Question 1, what is the number 1 job you want your money to do for you? Pinpoint your most important goals. Succession planning is it's a challenging process, and doing it right takes a certain amount of time. So let's make sure that we are involving the professionals and asking ourselves those discovery questions and allowing the professionals to ask those discovery questions.
And during this period, as you all are hearing this dialogue, feel free to sort of post, in the chat, what you're thinking about each one of these questions, and we will address it when we get to the Q&A section.
Thank you, Alyssa. I skipped all over that. I appreciate that. So even that way, if someone goes off cue, right? We planned yesterday, so they can jump right in. No one has to have a conversation. No one has to text me. We're good to go. So thank you. You just saw a portion of it live. So question 2, you can put in the chat as well. Do you feel that you have more than enough, just enough, or not enough to accomplish your goals? That can be a challenging question to ask oneself. So again, having that professional there can help you make sure that you don't have any blind spot. And what you want to do in this question is your intent. You want to identify the intent you identify will help guide the strategy you take to accomplish your goals. So that's the overall intent of asking yourself that question. And question 3, who should be involved in the financial decisions and the financial decision making, and when? So I think, Alyssa, you hit that earlier. Identify the right team of advisors and engage them in every step of the way, so you're not having a challenging conversation with your kids or with your brothers or with your sisters or other parts of the family. Even employees, because employees become family, especially the ones that are your key men and women. Begin planning years before the transition by assessing what the business will need to operate without the owner and nurturing potential successors. So I think about the young lady that asked the question earlier, who started a business in 2018. I love their question. I love that she jumped in and asked. The earlier we start, again, is it going to be take up 90% of your week? No, it's not. But at least it's going to be questions that you can build into how you're going to grow your business, how you're going to attract top talent, how you're going to retain top talent. How are you going to always make sure you're in a position so that way if someone calls you up out the blue and follows that up with an email, and an attorney is calling because they want to go through an exploratory conversation and the first phase of buying your business, you don't want to be caught running around trying to figure things out. You already have a nice team in place and you have professionals that you can talk through, and you don't have to go at it alone. Business is the ultimate competition. It's the ultimate team sport. So please always make sure you engage your true professionals.
And so with that, we have about 10 minutes or so left to take some questions. So if you all are thinking, I know this conversation is a little bit different than ones we normally have, but I want you to be thinking about this and be thoughtful. We are here to, any question that you have, we would really love to address it. We'll have more conversations on this topic because I think it's one that we don't spend a lot of time in, and there are so many new examples that we can share of what people are doing out there that we never really thought about, maybe even 10, 20 years ago. And so the market is open. There's lots of opportunity. And so we want to make sure that you all are primed and prepped for that. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand. Alicia can bring you on screen and you can ask your question. And if you didn't understand something, you want us to go back over it, we're happy to do that as well. I know somebody's got a question.
We're good, but not that good. I know that.
That's right. That is true.
Or if there's a scenario out there that you want us to talk through, whether it's yours that you've been through or something that you heard of, for the sake of the group, I think it'd be good to have those, to talk somebody in the open.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be shy, no questions yet.
We got one. Just joining. What did you miss? Oh, we're talking about what does it mean to have a business succession plan, and something that you should be thinking about right now for your business, particularly as we've moved through what I would call a really catastrophic crisis with the pandemic. where many of us, I know I didn't have one, didn't have a succession plan or thought about having one. And now's the opportunity to begin to think a little bit differently for your future. Okay, from Amani, how would a co-op go about setting up a succession plan? Any thoughts on that, Shay?
Yeah, so I know Amani, so I'm gonna speak from a little knowledge. Amani has a great a great business out there. I think it's St. Louis, if I can remember correctly. And so so the key thing in a co-op though, there's a couple of questions to ask. Who's the business owner? And who is the legal business owner of that entity? So so if it's a corporation, who owns the majority? If it's a singular business owner, so like for example, we have a couple of places down here that are membership driven and co-op driven. So Amani, if you have a co-op where everybody has a piece of ownership, that is something, again, I will go to a business attorney to kind of have those conversations to navigate through. But if it's a co-op in the sense that these are members paying to be part of the co-op, they have no ownership. So then they have really no say in the structure of how the business will how the succession will be. So that means if you are the sole owner or you or any other owner would have it'd be your responsibility to kind of lead that. And those paying members do not have to be brought in for any type of decision making or anything of that nature because they're paying members of the business. So if it's a member service, I think of like a Netflix or something like that. Netflix is not going to ask me, Alyssa, or anybody else on this call what they should do with their company because we're paying members. But if we were all co-op in Netflix and we all had a percentage of ownership, then I'm pretty sure at time of inception, they would have had some type of rules and regulations about how those conversations go with succession. So those would be the two bullet points I would say you need to figure out first. Are you a co-op that charges a membership and you're the sole owner? Or are you a co-op where members are the owner and that's articulated in the business paperwork?
Great. So we got some great questions coming in. We'll give some of you, if some of you are interested in coming on to ask your question personally, just raise your hand. I'm going to go with Rayanne's question right now. Rayanne Williams, what are the best things we can do to maximize the value of our business in the year or two prior to exiting?
My thing is profitability. I think you have to, let me back up a little bit. One, you have to know the industry you're in. The tech industry is a different ballgame. So standard profitability may or may not apply. That is going to be you understanding the industry that you're in. Because there are some industries that are so new. And although, Alyssa, you and I came through where GAAP, general accepted accounting principles, were this gold standard, there are some industries that's bending and changing that. And I think we have to be we have to acknowledge those. So I think a lot about tech.
I think about WeWork. I think about WeWork, and it's not a great story, but here's a guy who they never made a profit, and he was still able to attract money. So I think about those kind of things. For me, nothing's off the table in this new economy, in this new world. So I think about thinking a lot differently.
But I will say, if we're talking a true, and so yes, and WeWork, they grew and had a billion-some dollar valuation, all this $1 million valuation. But let's talk about, it's sectional, right? So let's talk about the true small business from, let's just say 0 to, let's just say 5 million. And what can you do to maximize? Well, if you're selling to another company, they're going to be looking at your financials. And on those financials, we hear this I hear this a lot. Well, my business makes money. We just don't show it on paper. That's our tax strategy. Well, that's perfectly fine. But I've been in the room with some business owners who have purchased businesses, and they have gotten great deals because there may be a business owner looking to sell. They're in a crisis mode, and the profitability doesn't transfer to the paper. Because then what you're doing, if you have a business with no profitability, and by I mean profitability, let's go real direct, net profit. What I mean by net profit means that you're showing money and you're paying taxes. Can't get around it. Just can't get around it. And so we can talk about the strategies and how you pay taxes and things of that nature, but just think about what you're going to be asking somebody. if you have a profitable company on paper, you not only can do 2 or 3 times whatever EBITDA amount that is, you can not only charge additional goodwill because of the additional items you may be getting for that business, let's say you're in a particular town and you just have your tentacles all wired through, you can charge that goodwill. But all of that shrinks if you're not showing profitability. Because if I was a business owner, I would just say your business is what it is on paper. I'm not going to, and if I can't fully assess the business, then I'm not going to go through with purchasing. So if I'm a business owner looking to sell, I'm going to know my industry. My industry is going to help my guidelines with my tax strategy and how I show profit. But in my experience doing M&A in the small business world, what really bites customers when trying to sell their business, especially if you're trying to get a loan from the bank, the lack of profitability, it really puts it puts a seller in a vicarious situation.
Absolutely. We only got a couple more minutes, so I'm gonna do sort of a rapid succession on this. We're gonna do these pretty quickly, and then for those that we can't get to, we will try to respond to you via email, or you could email us at programs@usblackchambers.org, and we will share some of this with Shay as well to get you answers or to point you in the right direction. Quick question, rapid fire. Is it best to seek a professional to work with you that is local to you, or does it matter?
Local. I like local. I got to see you, feel you, and touch you. At least that's just me.
Yeah. And when you want somebody who knows the market too.
Yeah, knows the market as well.
Let's see. Yep. Someone says that a friend of mine attempted to purchase a business from a family that suddenly closed. They refused to sell, stating they would never be close enough in monetary value to continue that discussion, and that conventional methods of evaluating their businesses are not enough of a fit for the seller. How should my friend reinitiate the discussions based on the seller's initial response? That's a tough one because it might mean that you need to move on.
Yeah, I can go real quick. What you want to do, so one, get with a business attorney, have them on your behalf draft a letter of intent. If that owner if the seller is open to sign a letter of intent, in that letter of intent, they can put, again, legal information about getting that information over to them, and financial documentation. And from that, I would talk with a CPA, maybe a banker, find out what that valuation is and come back with an offer. If that offer, if they don't want to take that offer, then I would just let them know that, if they change their mind, you're willing to go, but then you just need to move on.
Rosalind has asked, this is information apply to nonprofit organizations or just for for-profit businesses? I'm going to have Shay answer this, but I do want you to remember that for a nonprofit business, you're usually not taking the profit out of the business. That's why it's called a nonprofit. It usually gets transferred to the next nonprofit that might either purchase it or the group of board of directors that might take it on. But Shay, do you want to add a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I would say go to Alyssa, you hit all that on the head. If you want more information, there are, I think in every state, there's some type of nonprofit association, and they are structured to help support nonprofits with resources and questions. I would find that association in your area and pose that question for them. They will be able to give you some working things. But you're absolutely right. If it's a non-for-profit, at the end of the year, there's not going to be any money left because it's a non-for-profit. So if anything, you're talking about either transitioning that non-for-profit to somebody else. The concept of selling for money and taking money off the table, I'm not going to say it's null and void, but I would guess that it would be limited. But an association, a better professional in that industry, be able to help. And there are some nonprofit associations that are it's funny, they are non-for-profits that help non-for-profits, right, that can help you with that question.
Absolutely. And I think healthcare, there are some like when you think of large nonprofits, like healthcare industry, medical facilities sort of buying each other, hospitals buying each other, that might be a little bit differently. But I think, trying to go the route that Shay has mentioned probably works. And I'm going to take one last question. And that is, two things. One, this is being recorded, so we will have it on usblackchambers.org/webinars. So you can find this segment on there. For those of you who just started a business, I would say let's get a little bit down the line in terms of you getting your business on the right footing before we talk about what selling is. You should have it in the forefront of why you're starting your business, but there's a lot of things that you got to put in place for us to really understand directionally what the potential of that business is going to be over time. Finally,
And
I just
so,
want to go ahead. I'm sorry, Shay.
oh, I was gonna say, consult your professionals. That's what I would say. If it's speculative startup, a small business, I mean true small business, less than 100,000, less than $1 million, ain't nothing wrong with that. Everybody starts somewhere. But I think those are great questions. The next step I would encourage you to do, especially those that had some questions around like, well, how do I get with a business attorney, get with someone in that you can have a conversation with, and they can let you know if they can let you know how important that question is, or they may have a better question that you may need to ask. And a lot of times, that's what I always love working with my professionals. They tell me that's a good question, but here's the better question that you should be asking, and that really helps formulate. So
Right. And that's your kitchen cabinet, guys. That's your accountant, your attorney, probably that mentor that you work with. So I want to thank Shay for his time today. As I said, we will go back and mention and try to answer some of the questions that we have here. I also want you all to know that next Wednesday, we are having an event with Pharma on April 14th at 1 p.m. that we'd love for you to join. We're talking about vaccine confidence and the importance of getting the COVID-19 vaccine. On the 21st, Shay and I will be back with a new session for Chase Advancing Black Entrepreneurs. So join us there and just visit us at usblackchambers.org, usblackchambers.org/webinars. All the information is out there, and we hope to see you soon. The vaccine event, usblackchambers.org/vaccine, and you can register today for that. So thank you all for joining. We will get back to you relative to your questions. I hope this was informative for you, and we want you to be the biggest and the best that you can be. And so this is a topic that we'll continue to explore with all of you. Thank you again. Have a great day.
bye, y'all.